They say into your early life, romance can.
At the beginning of this year, I went to IFFR, the International Film Festival Rotterdam in the Netherlands, which is one of my favorite festivals I ever got to visit. I'll also be making a vlog type video about my time and experience there. This video, on the other hand, is going to be about the films I got to see. I was there for 2 weeks and I saw a lot of films, some good, some not so good, and some hidden gems. Young Hunter is an Argentinian film directed by Marco Berger. This film grips you to your seat and takes you on a ride. I went into it expecting something completely different and ended up being much more serious and contemplative. It tells a real captivating story about the loss of innocence and the abuse of power. The story follows a young gay teenager who is starting to experiment with his sexuality, but unfortunately falls into hands of dark and twisted people. I really enjoyed the shift this movie makes. In the beginning, while you're discovering this young man, you feel enamored by his youthfulness and inexperience. It's really easy to empathize and connect to his virtues because he's starting to blossom, but at the same time, he has this very adult and determined attitude. Later in the film, he changes like a chameleon, adapting to his surroundings the best way that he can, even if that means doing deplorable acts. He not only changes mentally and experience-wise, but his face also starts exuding this very carnivorous and seductive nature. It's done with no makeup and no effects whatsoever, and if there by any chance is something being done, it's basically untraceable. At the Q&A after the film finished screening, the director spoke about the power of the main actor's face and his expressions. He's able to be quite innocent and raw one second, and quite sinister and layered the next. The film wouldn't be the same without him, and I think he has a great future ahead of him. To my surprise, I found out that the film's story was based on actual events that happened in the early 2000s in Argentina. Even though the story is full of controversial and exploitative material, it never goes into that direction itself. The film would have been much different if it fell into someone else's hands. Marco Berger was working with minors and with a story about minors, so he had to find a way to show them being intimate without it being exploitative. He's really good at making tension and creating chemistry only through looks. The only real grudge I have with the film is the use of the soundtrack. At the Q&A, the director also talked about the film being a thriller. He wanted to make the scenes as suspenseful as possible, so he chose a soundtrack that would echo the suspense. In my opinion, I don't think he needed to do that at all. The soundtrack became overbearing and at times completely out of line. It was pretty melodramatic in a couple of scenes, and that took me and a guy that was sitting next to me in the theater out of the film completely. Other than that, the film is pretty excellent. It leaves you thinking about it and the complicated nature of sex and abuse. The acting is my favorite part of the film, as well as the subtlety when it comes to the direction of the erotic scenes where the implied and suggested take the center stage. Marco Berger is definitely someone I'm going to keep an eye on in the future, and I'm gonna go check out some of his earlier films as well. Merry Christmas Yiwu is a documentary film by another great Serbian director, Mladen Kovačević, that at times feels and looks like a feature film. It reminded me of another Balkan documentary that came out recently called Honeyland, in which the direction of the film is so precise and meticulous that the lines between fact and fiction start to blur. Merry Christmas Yiwu follows the lives of workers in a factory in a city called Yiwu, in which there are over 11 million residents and 600 factories that produce around 70% of the world's Christmas decorations. Their whole lives revolve around those factories. They work there, most of them live inside the factory where they have their own quarters, some fall in love and dream about leaving the industry, some even dream about starting their own factories. Mladen spoke to me about the lack of an ideology behind the film. He didn't want any explicit messages woven into it. He especially wanted to escape the regular route of Western filmmakers and documentarians that are in one way or another coming to China with an already set agenda that often is very problematic, and instead of breaking down the stereotypes, only enforce them even more. He finds characters which best exemplify the reality of many people in today's China and shows their everyday humanity that is so often left behind the curtain. In his films, they stop being the figures in a factory and they start exposing themselves to the audience, not in a classical documentary way where they are sitting on a sofa talking to the director about their lives. On the contrary, this film and its camera wander around the factory and just happen to catch their everyday conversations and relationships that are already formed and in action, just like a feature film. It is hard at times to look at this like a documentary because the scenes flow so well together. That is because it uses long takes in which there are gold nuggets for everyone that is interested, and they feel like they were crafted meticulously. That also might be because the director himself graduated in feature filmmaking and somehow after that only made documentaries. That made the film feel fresh, new, and exciting. The scenes indeed were crafted meticulously, but the everyday existence of the people never seemed forced or manufactured like the Christmas decorations they are making. That juxtaposition is one of the most crucial parts in understanding the film and the people inside it. They are the ones that bring life to the film, but they are also this very alive and beating link to the most important holiday in the Western world. Without them, Christmas and New Year's aren't Christmas and New Year's as we know them. We aren't following in every footstep of the characters, we are shown a collage of people that sometimes intertwine and create drama. There's a heartbreaking scene in the film which is the best example of Madden's powers as a director. A long staggering shot of a heartbroken young man who got broken up with by a girl who also works at the factory, singing and putting his emotions out to everyone at a karaoke bar. At face value, that scene might be melodramatic, but it truly flourishes into an amazing sequence because of the scene that comes before it, where he is putting on a tough persona, either for the camera or for his friend, or even for himself. Those two scenes juxtaposed give to the people so much more life and character. It all becomes so much more three-dimensional without the need of any 3D glasses. I love the almost distant and objective cinematography. It was like another character in the film. It told the stories of those people much more sincerely than any handheld camera or a close-up really could. It gave them the space which then they could fill up and color however they wanted. The director also managed to throw in some interesting and creative ways of telling the story beyond the just apparent everyday scenes by using the transcribed text from the film and giving them a life of their own. I recommend this film to everyone that got at least a little bit curious after this video, and to all the ones that are fans of documentaries. I'll be covering more of the films I saw at the festival in upcoming videos. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.